So how do we get to the point where I talk about hidden scars? It's important if we're going to talk about stuff that we have in our lives that we understand how we got there. And I want you to look at the screen real quickly. So I want to walk you through this. Go with me next slide, media, real quickly. I want you to, so it all begins with this idea or this phenomenon called the fall. Somebody say the fall. Now, for those of you who may be new to the church, let me explain to you what the fall is. The Bible says that when God created man and women, they were perfectly made in the image of God. There was no defect, there was no flaw, they were made in the image of a perfect God, a powerful God, an excellent God. So everything about man was perfect. That's how God created, because everything that comes from God must reflect God. So if God is the antithesis, if God is the personification of excellence, of goodness, that means when man was originally made, man came out good. Somebody say good. Then the Bible says that Satan took the form of a serpent, and he came and he tempted man, and he caused man to step out of his original design into a photocopy of something that God never intended. That is called the fall. When man disobeyed God. Now, whether you believe in the Bible or not, whether you believe in God or not, that's not what's important for me this morning. I want you to understand something this morning. If we don't believe in the fall, then how do we experience the craziness that's happening today? How do we explain the pain and the suffering that we experience when someone can pull a gun and shoot somebody, or someone can rape somebody and molest someone? Where did the idea come from man to abuse man like that? That's called the fall. Are we good so far? So whether you dismiss the root, you can't dismiss the results. And everything that happens has a cause. Everything that occurs has a cause. Are you guys with me so far? So when we talk about the fall, we talk about, now we move to your birth. So you and I are born into a world that is fallen. So we begin our human existence at a deficit. And that's why David says, in sin was I conceived. Doesn't mean that his mom and dad sinned, even though, but David said, my very existence, my very genesis began in a mess. Are we good so far? So now you take the fall, which is an event that met me, that was waiting for me. I'm born to broken parents. I'm born in a broken world. I'm born in a world that is rebellious against God. And now you put circumstances in my own particular life, wherever you grew up in. Whether it be a family that was a broken family, a non-traditional family, a family that was missing something, or things that you saw as a kid, as a teenager. Whatever it is, we all have circumstances that we bring to our reality today. Everyone who's sitting here in front of me today is a sum total of circumstances. And that's why you should never look at someone as less than, because we're all carrying circumstances. We're actually containers of content that happened to us. And that's why even as an adult, sometimes you can't shake certain things because you carry it throughout your whole life. Here you are 40 and 50 years old, and you're still reaching back for that little boy, that little girl, because we all come from the fall, your birth, and your circumstances. Are we good so far? I want to teach. Somebody say teach. Go with me to the next slide, media. So when we talk about this, now we add this thing called trauma. We have this thing called trauma. And now this trauma, now you have a response to it, and now it produces an effect. And Jesus said, look what Jesus says in Luke chapter 4 as he begins his ministry. Jesus understands he's here to deal with humanity, not with saints, not with angels. He left the angels in heaven. He came to deal with mankind. And as he begins his ministry, he says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to preach the good news to those who are blind, to open the eyes of the blind, to set the captives free. Captive from what? When Jesus walks on the scene at the beginning of his ministry, he finds people who are dealing with heavy trauma. Religious leaders oppressing people Women who are told that they can't love God because women have no access to God. People who are handicapped and paralyzed who can't go to the temple to worship. People who are seen as less than, racism, discrimination. Jesus walks into that mess and says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to deal with mess. And a church that doesn't address the mess will never preach the message. Can I teach for a minute in here? A church that denies that people are not all put together as they seem will never walk people into a holistic transformation in Jesus Christ. Folks, can I submit to you that God is not just interested in your spirituality, he's interested in your sanity.